Hi. So, if you're a brave, intrepid soul that is coming along for the ride, um, one of the things I'm trying to do with just spending more time, like in front of the camera, and also my aspiration of reading the book cover to cover, is kind of solve for this thing that I'm experiencing right now, which is like that it's like when I'm thinking about what I wanna say, I'm feeling super clear, and then as soon as I'm on camera, there's, like, kind of a blockage, and I was thinking about it today, where I was thinking that I think it's kind of like a pressure of getting it right, which is sort of, like, subtle, but it's having such an impact that my flow is really interrupted. So, it's, like, a little awkward, and so if I'm following all the experts, the way to solve for this is just keep doing it, and, so I'm just gonna keep doing it because it's like it's a really subtle thing, which is just about getting to the point that I'm comfortable enough that I can, like, inhabit this and offer more because I actually think that for a viewer, to be more, like, kind of in a zone is offers more. So, okay, so what I'm going to do, my aspiration for this year is to read this book cover to cover, read it aloud. I think I mentioned in the last video that and even, like, my breathing is even kinda like, like, noticing that, um, is that my aspiration is to read it cover to cover live in this format as a way to like, it helps me kinda get back into it, and it sparks a lot of my thought for the ways to talk about it in other, forums, and, the other is just to practice being in front of a camera, and so, yeah, I do get it. I do get that there's a sense of just, like, getting comfortable where there's less of a sense that anything like, of just kind of like the unfamiliarness, I guess, of doing this. So, anyhow, so, I'm gonna do a little story time. I'm probably with a very, like, healthy understanding that people will not be joining me on these as I do them. Hopefully, that'll change. But, if you are joining me, I wanna do I have anything in my teeth? I did have something in my teeth. That I do, I welcome comments and interaction because I love hearing about what's happening with people as they're getting into this. So, so here we go. So last time I wrapped up with Dabrowski's theory of positive integration and talked also about the body mind. So for for today's reading, um, I'm going to launch in on page 7, and on page 6, there is a diagram for anybody following at home with their book. Here we are. So this is the triune brain. So a human brain is the most advanced 3 pounds of technology on the planet. We share many brain functions with other animals, but it's the executive functions of our prefrontal lobe that provides the unique capability for innovation and change, separating us from all other living beings. The brainstem and limbic system have powerful reflexes and responses that are activated to automatically protect us when they detect lack of familiarity or change, including the associated danger in taking the risk of doing things differently, innovation. Of course, there are exceptions to this reflexive avoidance, such as when we need to innovate and change to survive, or if we're so physically safe, usually meaning financially, that the cost of taking risks can be managed without significant consequences. So, yeah. So the brainstem regulates the body's complex automatic functions, such as temperature, hunger, and integrated activities of all organ systems. It has the reflexive synchronization with nature we see in lizards, hence the term lizard brain. But contrary to the implication of its lower position, it's an intelligence of a higher order. It doesn't require conscious management, and it only understands the present moment, existing in the unified field of presence without effort. Metaphorically, it's the large, unblinking eye of a salamander staring back at you before the amphibian darts away, if startled, a reflex and survival response. Your brainstem is a savant that can't speak or read, yet it can oversee the complexity of operating a human body. It's the part of your brain that holds deep knowledge, has a direct relationship with your body, and access to its buried truths. Your secrets are safe there, and they only get revealed when conscious inquiry occurs and trust is established. The limbic system, so if you're following along the picture, brainstem. The limbic system, also known as the mammalian brain or emotional state, functions through connection to others in the world around us. This is the part of your brain that feels and responds with emotional and physical movement. Pleasure and pain are felt and processed, usually followed by responsive action. If the brain were a house, the stem would manage utilities, water, electricity, and heat, while the limbic system would cook, comfort, and make the house a home. These areas of your brain contain much of your unique profile of preferences and aversions. And although this can be reflexive, it can also be managed and moderated by the higher functions found in the prefrontal lobes, also called the prefrontal cortex, PFC. The prefrontal lobes and executive function are the source of language, contemplation, creation, thinking, learning, memory, and a suite of other remarkable functions. There are two prefrontal lobes, the left and the right hemispheres. The left hemisphere performs a fascinating crossover because it controls the right side of the body and is responsible for logic, language, analytics, and order. Activities like reading, writing, computation, and telling time. The right hemisphere controls the left side of the body and is responsible for visual awareness, imagination, spatial abilities, facial recognition, music awareness, and interpreting social cues. Trauma researcher Bessel van der Kolk writes in The Body Keeps the Score about brain imaging studies revealing that patients with post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, have reduced ability, or rather reduced activity in their left hemispheres, the logical brain matter that performs and processes time and chronology. This accounts for these patients' sense that traumatic events continue to happen long after they've passed, causing the distressing inability to view them with a historical perspective. So, one more picture, one last look here. I think one of the things that's really interesting here is that, the kind of reflexes and the, kind of like lizard brain is considered to be like really primitive and like often maligned as so for its simplicity. But it's actually such an evolved technology that it's conserved into really like a tiny um amount, like almost like think of like a processor or any kind of technology that over time it improves in its capability and decreases in size. And that the prefrontal cortex, which we tend to associate as being our most advanced, which it is, but it's so massive and actually inefficient that, it uses a lot of energy. I think I'm gonna mention that in a minute. No spoiler alert. And it's only really operational about 5% of the time, while the reflexes are operating very complex functions just, like, without interruption. So, I think one of the things in this is just really having a respect for all aspects of ourselves. That was part of the whole thing here. So I'll dive back in. So here is the next subheader is conscious, subconscious, and unconscious. So the frontal lobes are not only the last to fully develop, they're also the first to degenerate with memory loss. Most of what's considered consciousness is the functioning of the prefrontal lobes. But if or when we drop into deeper states of feeling and presence, the conscious mind reveals itself as the tip of the iceberg. The experiences of pleasure and peace reveal layers of ourself beneath thought. The conscious mind, what we know, is primarily related to the frontal lobes of our brain. The subconscious mind, what we sort of know, is primarily the limbic system in the body. The unconscious mind, what we definitely don't know, is inaccessible information deeply coded in the brainstem, such as how to operate and manage organ function and how to breathe. We can use our conscious mind to understand and respect the reflexes of the brainstem, an even deeper knowledge of what Carl Jung believed is stored and transferred between generations, a notion that has been modernized with epigenetics, the study of inherited patterns of gene expression. The conflict between the conscious, innovative thinking brain that wants change and the unwavering survival programming of its unconscious functions that keeps us safe and alive can hold us in the same patterns throughout our lives. Like a shopping cart with a wonky wheel, many of us can relate to wanting a change and then getting pulled back into old patterns, even when we try to steer away from them. The conscious mind is like our hands on the cart, and the subconscious self is the programming stored in the body that pulls away. This dissonance is part of the human experience, and the conscious mind gets blamed for self sabotaging behaviors and chastised as more moral or ethical weakness. The unconscious and subconscious programming deep within our body mind follows the directions from its earliest programming, while the conscious mind gets shamed and punished. The Parinama Method seeks to understand the role of subconscious information stored in our body, linked to the limbic system and brainstem, with our conscious mind frontal lobes, and helps us work through coherent and concerted action to unify the conscious, subconscious, and unconscious through the process of conscious reclamation. Well, so, I'll tell you there really hasn't been anyone that has encountered this book who's considered it light reading, and as someone who's rereading it for the first time in a while, I'm gonna have to concur. It is dense. This baby's intense. Yeah, I mean, it's been interesting because, like, like, a person's relative confidence around their intelligence, like, makes aspects of this kind of confronting to people, and, but they're really I mean, it was really intended to be as accessible as possible, whereas, like, I mean, just reading that, I'm like, "Yeah, that's that falls a little short." Um, but it's like, I mean, I don't know, like, I'd be interested what somebody has to say about that. Um, but, I guess, like, the intention here was to really, like, lay a groundwork, and my hope is that it isn't too much right up at the top. I think one of the things is, like, what really matters is that people can keep showing up for this, because it's cumulative, it is nuanced, and there is a lot to it. But it's kind of the thing where it's like the really gross analogy, which is like, how do you eat an elephant one bite at a time? It's kind of like just staying with it. So, you know, if it's kind of like too dense for people and it has them turn away, I feel like that is, um, yeah, I'd really hear that if somebody had to say that and really consider ways to like reorganize this content so it is even more accessible or accessible to begin with. So anyway, I'm gonna read a little bit more. I was finding that when I was reading that, I was actually like kind of dehydrating. So I took a little sip of my drink, and so I'll give it another go here, and we'll see what happens. Um, if you've gotten this far and maybe you've dragged and you dropped here, thank you. I just wanna say thank you. Appreciate you. Okay, here we go. Somatic and you know what? It's actually autonomic and somatic. Okay, so the nervous system is organized by involuntary, autonomic, and voluntary somatic functioning. The reflexive functions, often referred to as involuntary, are part of the autonomic nervous system. Autonomic is automatic. Conversely, our voluntary movements are the actions of the somatic nervous system. The voluntary functions are mostly governed below the subconscious by the unconscious. The voluntary functions are affected by everything: conscious, subconscious, and unconscious. There are bridges for transformation between all levels of the triune brain made accessible by conscious voluntary action. The autonomic nervous system regulates reflexes and responses for both. I'm going to raise this up. For both excitation and relaxation. For excitation, functions like increasing heart rate and breathing, and for relaxation, functions like sleep and healing. The excitation response is labeled sympathetic, and the rest and repair are labeled parasympathetic. Both sympathetic and parasympathetic are automatic functions operating primarily out of the reflexive lizard brain. Neither activation nor relaxation understand abstract thinking, so they don't understand time. Recall the first, oh my gosh, recall the left frontal lobe relationship with trauma, or the difference between a memory and anticipation. These responses to anything seen in the mind's eye are experienced as if they're happening in the present moment. Perhaps this is why worry and fixation is a stressful memory of a fixation on a stressful memory create stress in the body, whether or not there's an active threat. Chronic stress is a uniquely human experience. Most biological organisms use stress as an acute mechanism for reflexive action to support survival. If you remain activated in a low-grade stress response for long periods of time, your nervous system doesn't do parasympathetic functions to support your long-term health, like good rest, good digestion, healing, sex, and reproduction, because the sense of immediate threat take precedence. The difference between a pleasantly activating stimulation versus a distressing and overwhelming stress response is an important one that I discuss in the Parinama Method. See chapter 2. We'll get there. Actions based on conscious decisions, such as trying a new recipe, choosing to go for a walk, or trying a new route for your work commute, are voluntary functions of the somatic nervous system. The ratio of voluntary to involuntary and conscious to unconscious functioning is humbling. Different estimates have most humans consciously operating their lives between 5 and 10% of the time, which means our life is between 90 and 90% subconscious and unconscious. Most of our life is governed by the early programming of our reflexes. So, how do you access more of your nervous system? By finding the somatic bridges between the conscious, subconscious, and unconscious. One significant bridge is breath, an automatic function linked to the stress response of elevated heart rate and respiration, which can be slowed down with conscious control. An inhale is biochemically linked to the activating sympathetic response, and an exhale is linked to the relaxation of the parasympathetic response. Yogic breathwork called pranayama uses breath to balance, relax, and stimulate the nervous system. When the inhalation is emphasized, we tend to become more alert. If you want to encourage a relaxation response, elongate the exhale. All right. Do we have it in us to do one more? I kind of feel like the answer is absolutely not, but I think I'm still going to try. Yeah, I mean, I'm just checking in with myself about my, like how I'm functioning as far as like my consciousness and even my thinking as I'm talking and trying to portray my thoughts. And I'm like watching kind of what slows down a more natural flow. And it's interesting because it's like cognitively actually very, look, like right out of the like eating my own dog food here, is cognitively I feel very at ease about this. In my professional life, my personal life, I do a lot of talking in front of groups and presenting to people. So it's like the talking to people part, it's pretty usually like I don't stress at all. But right now, I can feel a physical constriction that is related to doing this. So even my breath feels tight. So it's like noticing that as much as I'm convinced that this isn't an issue, my body is actually telling me otherwise, which is it's like this constriction and it's interesting because I'm wondering, it's like if like the fact that my breath is actually like made shallow by this constriction, if that's actually cutting off like some of the oxygen flow to my brain. Um, and also noticing that I'm pretty disembodied right now. Like, so it's like kind of there's a lot of energy going up to like thinking about like kind of doing a good job here, which is pretty optical and really about, and I guess in a way, it's like imagining what somebody else is going to be seeing, which is like absolutely impossible and quite frankly, kind of just like a waste of time because, as we'll get to later, like what people are really seeing is projections that are coming out of their own lens of their own experiences. So, I mean, I think that some of the really good advice that I've gotten has been about how it's just a good idea um to just like really kind of put out what you can and just hope for, like that the right people are going to receive it in the way that really makes the most sense for them. And also, and honestly, that really is all you can ever hope for. There's no way to like control somebody's perception of something, or maybe there is. Maybe there's a little bit of way, but it is not what I'm trying to do. So instead of reading forward, I want to do some breathing here. So I'm going to inhale through my nose. And I'm actually going to try to like elongate my exhale to try to create some more space here. So, and encourage some relaxation. So I'm going to balance this so where my inhale is going to be shorter than my exhale, as we just read, because I'm trying to relax myself. I'm trying to like reduce my stimulation. So I think I'm going to try to go for like a 4 to a 6 count. So 4 on the inhale and do like a 6 on the exhale. So inhale through the nose. And I'm finding on that last inhale that I actually was able to find some more space in my lungs. And you'll see we have a visitor here. So that's like a nice feeling of like when it starts to release a little bit. And also while I was breathing, I was trying to bring my attention into like the physicality of my body. So I want to take one more breath and then I'm going to try to start reading again and see if there's a change. So 4, I'm going to inhale on 4 and then exhale on for 6. And please join me. So inhale through the nose. And exhale through the mouth. Do one more. And exhale. Just kind of like shake out any residual. And we have a little guy right here who has a little food on his nose. I'm going to try to get it off. He doesn't care though. He doesn't mind. So I feel a little bit calmer. Let's see if, so one of the things I will say is that when I was reading, there's a tightness in my throat that I was finding that not only was there a bit of like like I was like, I need a sip of water, but there was also just actually a tightness. So I'm going to do one. I think I just recalled that back up. So I'm going to do another breath in for 4 and an exhale for 6. And let's give this a go. So here we go. All right. So Ramas, Rajas, and Sattva. It's funny because I keep feeling like I need to explain what it's about, but I'm about to read a book that's me explaining what it's about. Oh my gosh. Okay. So thousands of years ago, human consciousness was mapped and organized by Vedic scholars in India. Vedics thought chakras were like energetic wheels or vortices that were the physical headquarters for each facet of our psyche and self, hubs in which experiences and information were received, incorporated, stored, and expressed. This profound exploration by ancient scholars and mystics happened a long time before human dissection and surgery would reveal bundles of specialized nerves and neuropeptide enrichment centers located near the spinal column, corresponding with each hub's unique function. The Vedics, in the tradition of Ayurveda, used the framework of doshas, 3 states of the body: kapha, earth; pitta, fire; and vata, air, considered to be the qualities that need to be actively balanced for health and fulfillment. These qualities are also known as tamas, earth; rajas, fire; and sattva, ether, which correspond to rest, work, and contemplation. In our Western lives, we tend to place highest value on the fiery, rajasic state of activity and action, and to resist the heavy, earthy, tamasic states of rest, digestion, healing, and repair, which often carry a stigma of laziness. And often there can be a limited tendency, if there is one at all, to cultivate the ethereal sattvic state of contemplation, meditation, and peace. We experience sattva in moments of grace. The time spent in study or in dedication to spiritual practices is sattvic. When practical considerations are not emphasized and energy is primarily focused on knowledge and transcendence. There are seasons in life for all these states, but the denial of our tamasic needs for rest, relaxation, and recovery creates a compounding effect on our health, leading to burnout and other health-related problems. When we're chronically activating the nervous system with stimulation and stress, it's only a matter of time before the body will find a way to restore itself through illness or incapacitation. I'm feeling a little bit better. I will proceed to neuropeptides, the emotion molecules. So Rene Descartes launched centuries of dissociation between the body and mind. I think, therefore I am, known as Cartesian dualism, a separation so preposterous that it would require centuries of indoctrination to believe it's possible. This philosophical position states that the conscious mind exerts absolute control over the body. Although this insistence on humans having a central position in the universe has never landed on the right side of history, I discussed Galileo in chapter 9. Comedian Emo Phillips says, I used to think that the brain was the most wonderful organ in my body. Then I realized who was telling me this. The earth circles the sun, and the body exerts more than a passing influence on the brain. Science has shown us that the actions of hormones and neuropeptides. So I'm going to reread that. The body exerts more than a passing influence on the brain. Science has shown us through the actions of hormones and neuropeptides how the brain takes direction from the body and the body from the brain. Neuropharmacology professor Candace Pert, who discovered the opioid receptor and the HIV treatment peptide T, which was actually the treatment in Dallas Buyers Club movie, asserted that our body is our subconscious, meaning that to unlock deeper truths, those deeper than episodic memories, we should look to our physical body. Pert's Molecules of Emotion, the science behind mind-body medicine, chronicles her career and discovery of the biological chemicals that bridge that form bridges between the body and the mind. Her clinical explorations found that neuropeptides shift emotional pain into physical tension and physical rigidity triggered by environmental and emotional stressors by signaling tissues to cut off oxygen. Pert observed that the mind will wall off unpalatable emotions and made the fascinating revelation that the heart has the same neurotransmitter receptors as the brain. According to Pert, a healthy body is changing, not stuck, and flexible, not rigid. The nervous system and the body are an ecosystem containing many functions working in concert. Communication within the body is carried out by neuropeptides, hormones, and electrical signals. The emotion molecules are part of the nervous system and are found communicating and responding throughout the body in a wide variety of cell surfaces, forming a connective bridge between our biology and our lived experience by storing it in the tissues of our body. Another class of molecules playing a significant role in our body's relationship with its environment is glucocorticoids, stress hormones. These hormones respond to various environmental stimulations. For example, they initiate the fight, flight, or freeze response in the body used by the autonomic nervous system when it's in sympathetic activation. These hormones increase blood pressure and redirect energy away from growing, healing, and long-term projects like reproduction. Again, a body under chronic stress exposure gets overstimulation via glucocorticoids. So it will not be able to feel safe enough to truly sleep, digest, or relax. Keep in mind that these stress response mechanisms existed long before the evolution of abstract thinking and imagination. And conceptual contemporary threats like rent, job performance, and traffic. When we concern ourselves with future threats or past hurts, the older brain structures function without time and language, and it senses everything is happening at the present moment and responds using reflexes shaped by experience. All right, I think that's it for me. Yeah. It's interesting because it felt a little bit better. I think there's probably a big glass of water next to me when I'm doing this. It's kind of it's interesting as I'm reading this, like some of the insights are, like one of the thoughts that just arose was that I thought like, yeah, when I was a student, like I couldn't really get through a textbook. And it really felt like a textbook. I actually can't even believe I wrote that. I did. And reading it kind of because I haven't read it now for a couple months or like read into it like maybe longer than that. Trying to think probably the last time I like read it was when I got the file back from the proofreader, and I didn't even read it then. I was actually just looking at edits, so I was scanning it. So there's a really good chance that the last time I was really deep in reading this was in April, which is almost a year ago. So I'm getting a lot out of reading this, and hopefully, a person or two is gonna like get something out of this, just kind of, like I really, it's just hopefully spending a little time together in this kind of like way. And Yeah. Yeah, I think that one of the things that's really arising is the need to really see, I'm getting tight again in my, like, throat and, like, kinda, like, up in here, but really, like, I'm seeing how it's important to support people in their process with this, like, that it's just, I can see that. I can see that. It's pretty academic, this, and, I'm not an academic person. It just seemed kinda confusing because I basically wrote a textbook. So, more on that later. But anyway, thank you. If you're watching this, I mean, honestly, if you're watching this, I love you. Thank you for staying with me, and, anything that you have for me, I really wanna hear it. Even as I'm reading it, I think like, "Huh, there's other ways to look at this," and I really welcome these discussions. I don't I feel like one of the things that presenting something like this, it's like, well, I was thinking about this today. It's like well researched, well put together. A lot of effort went into it. It doesn't, I really, I really still want it to represent like an opening of a conversation with people, because, like it's like almost like mistaking intelligence, or like or that, like whatever, like, I mean, this is intelligence, but like like your own impressions and your own like sense and your own like desire to kind of talk about it, even if it's like expressing what you have to say is hard to come by, is to just not negate the fact that you have a point of view on these things, and have something to add, have something to contribute in terms of like even expanding the understanding and the thinking about these concepts. It is certainly, it's like, I'm not a guru. I'm not coming at this like, um, I know anything more about you or anyone than they know, in the sense of I can heal you. I have a framework that's incredibly helpful, and we're in this together. It's a very human experience that's turns out is unavoidable. Um, But yeah, but anyway, I wanna say thank you. Thank you so much, and, yeah, don't be a stranger, alright? See you soon.